Hello everybody and welcome back to Biome Builds, the Minecraft building series where I take a biome in Minecraft and create a build inspired by it. My name is KashMuney and today we are going to be tackling the Plains biome. The Plains biome is quite minimalist with wide open expanses of grass. You can find villages and lots of friendly animals here. It's one of Minecraft's most classic biomes and a great place to make your builds. To me, the open fields and prevalence of the plains calls to my Minecraft roots to make a farm. So we are going to be turning this island into a giant farm today. Anyways, let's dive right in and get started. So as we begin prepping this area, let's talk about the plan. We have some essentials we need to include on this island. We need a farmhouse, some sort of barn, lots of crop fields, and I'd like to have some sort of like pastures or little pens for a bunch of animals. Also be fun to have a little dock because, you know, we're on an island and all that. Let's get started with some planning. That is going to help us figure out the layout and help us understand what we're going to make here. I haven't gotten far, but I've run into an issue. I think this island is just too tall. I want some like nice sloping fields, and we just have these like giant like cliffs almost. So I think we need to take this island down a couple blocks and go from there. I mean, sure, World Edit has its limits, but at least it can do something like this. Ooh, that's laggy. Okay, that gives us a little bit more to work with. I bet you weren't expecting a terraforming project today because I wasn't. Oh, anyway, we got it done and we have some nice slopes to our island to have some nice tranquil fields of wheat. Okay, but let's get back to working on our planning. We have our dock, our farmhouse, our dirt road going through our island, our barn, animal enclosures, our silos. Yeah, I think that's all the main structures. We're gonna have a lot of fields and, you know, fences between fields, maybe some pastures. But for now, this is what we're gonna be building. All right, so let's start with our farmhouse. I'm gonna start by outlining the shape we want, just get a general idea, figure out the dimensions, anything cool we're gonna add. I think we wanna have like a porch. A porch seems very farm-like, don't you think? I did say this was an outline. I am putting way too much effort into this. Here I am trying to make the finished build out of wool when really I just need a vague idea of what's going on. And there we go. I like it as our outline. We're gonna have our front door. Maybe have a second story right here. I like it a lot. It is awfully big compared to these other outlines. We might have to scale those up a bit, but that's a problem for future cache. Let's work on this. So I'm thinking for our house, we just go for a classic white theme. Make it look like we have white siding on here. When building, I always have these moments where it just looks awful. Like, this is such a boring face to the build. Whenever I get stuck like this, I take a step back and go with two options. The first is to create a shape that helps break up the space. Maybe add a sort of window to the front. We could do something like this, just adding a couple windows to break up the flat surface we had going on. Now, if that isn't enough, we can work on the texture, adding some blocks to go from like a darker color at the bottom to a lighter shade at the top. And through some quick experimenting, we get something like this that looks a lot better. You often just need to experiment with the color and the shapes going on to get something that you like. And once you figure it out, the good news is you can just use it for the rest of the surfaces. We're gonna have some change up of styles, but the main idea stays there. And there we go. Now we just do the same thing for the roof. Perfect. We got what we were looking for. We used some nice color texture and some shape texture to make an interesting roof. And of course, we can do our interior. We have our main room right here, a nice little kitchen in here, a small bedroom upstairs, and a nice storage attic. So yeah, that's our farmhouse done. It looks super cute, super cozy. I love the little chimney. I love the green roof. It really stands out. But with that done, we can get started on our next task, the barn. I am excited to make a barn. I can't say that I've made one before, and they're very distinctive. We're going for a very classic barn shape, so hopefully we can do it justice. Barns often have a kind of short, stocky body, and then for the roof, they often have a very steep part that goes to a more shallow part. And there we go. We have a nice barn design, and we have a little side piece right here. I don't know. I think this might be fun to just have some storage here. Okay, so we have the outline. Now we need to actually start filling it in, which, I mean, we have a red barn, so surely we use red blocks, but we're gonna have some amount of texturing to this. So I guess the big question is, what red blocks do we use? There's so many. Let's see. I think we go for something pretty plain. We really want the red color to stand out, so having too much of a gradient or too much texture is just going to overwhelm it. I think I like something like this for now. Nice and easy. It doesn't have to be set in stone, but it provides a nice guideline to to go off of. And I'm just laying out the blocks to see if I like this sort of transition before we blend it. I think we need to make some changes. Barns are usually made out of wood planks painted red, which this texture works great, but having something really flat like this kind of takes away from that wood plank idea we have. We need to adjust this color palette. And you know, sometimes we just need to say screw it and go with one texture. We can use another block to just texture the base a little bit, but for the most part, we are going to be using this strip mangrove wood. You often have to prioritize things when building, and for this, we are prioritizing this wood texture and just adapting our build to it. We can then add in our basic roof design. And that's our basic barn. I just wanted to get some blank walls and the roof up, but much like the problem with our house, the walls are blank and ugly, so we need to add something to it to make it a bit more interesting. We can start by adding our barn doors and a nice little window for the front. I love how we have the doors on these little sort of rails just sliding open and close. I think this is super cute. Okay, we have the sides and back of our barn done. I decided to just do the same thing as the front, but close our doors. And we have our little shelter right here. We're just gonna use this for storage, maybe put some boxes and farm supplies, who knows. Okay, so I just want to clean up this barn, get the final details done. Just gotta add some texture to this roof, maybe add in, I don't know, like what is it, one of those like spinny wind things, a wind vane I think it's called. I don't know, that's what Google said. But anyway, let's wrap this up. It doesn't look like much has changed, but we just added some texture to the roof, our little weather vane, and texture the sides of our barn a bit, so we can finally move inside and work on this interior. As for what to put in here, that is a good question. I mean, we're not going to have horses or anything like that. That's going to be for our stables, but this could just have hay, maybe some farming equipment. I think it'd be a good idea to add some sort of hay loft. Here's a nice little makeshift hay loft. We can have a little tractor and trailer. So I decided to put the tractor outside. It's a little bit too small in here, but I just replicated this over here and did the floor. So yeah, I was kind of busy. Oh, I also made a little food storage corner and a little text station up here, maybe to monitor the weather or something like that. Although I feel like at this point, I've kind of run out of ideas for things to add. What actually goes in a barn? Let me think about that. Oh my gosh, I finished it. That was a bit of a struggle towards the end, but we have our barn done. I decided to add a sort of log chopping operation. We have some sort of saw here, turning these logs into planks, then stacks of planks and stacks of logs. Have a little cart with some hay down here. Made a little redstone device that does something. Apparently smashes a cake. And yeah, this barn feels super cozy and very farm-like. So we have two buildings and a tractor. So let's get started on our stables now. This is where our horses are going to be and where our animals are going to be when they aren't out in the pastures. So we really don't need to make this too complicated. Anyway, we have our outline in. You can kind of see like we're going to have little stalls or something along here. A nice walkway down the center. Then we're going to have some pens over here. Maybe have a chicken coop right here. Sticking to the theme of wood planks like we have with our barn, we are going to make this stable out of some birch wood. As for the roof, I kind of want to do something with the pale oak wood. I really like it as a block. It doesn't really have any slab and stair variants. Maybe we can do something with tuff. The tuff is really texture compared to the birch wood. Cobblestone feels too 2014. Okay, hear me out. We're gonna try andesite. Might still be very 2014. It doesn't have enough oomph to it. Like it just feels bland. For the sake of simplicity, I went with a deep slate look just to match the barn. With these both having the same roof, it just helps signify to the viewer that, oh, these are both related. So anyway, we can move on to our next step. We are going to work on texturing this outside and making it look a little bit better. Here's a nice trick. If you're ever texturing something and don't really have a good block to work with, we can just add some lichen to the bottom. It makes the wood feel a bit darker and helps blend everything together a bit better. When working on the sides, we need to figure out the layout of everything. So I'm just kind of working inside and out to figure out where everything's going to be. That way we can make sure everything links up and actually, you know, makes sense. Okay, so the outside is mostly done, at least the outside of the building. I did go ahead and texture the roof like we did with the barn. Again, just want them to match up a little bit. I started a bit on the interior, or more like started laying stuff out, but we still have our work cut out for us. I guess first we'll do the floor, give ourselves a bit of a setting that actually makes sense sense for this room. Okay, so there's our floor. Now I'm just figuring out each of the horses' stalls. Nothing too fancy. We're just gonna have like, a little way in, a little way out to the pasture, maybe some water, hay. And yeah, I think that's what we're gonna be doing for our horse pens. Through the power of World Edit, I can just copy this over a few times. Perfect, and there we go. Then we can create our little pig enclosure. Here's our pig pen, nice and dirty, just the way it should be. Here's our little chicken coop, and these areas definitely look empty, but once we have our animals in here and, the whole area is kind of synced up, it's gonna look a lot better. Okay, pasture time. This has to be easy, right? We're literally just like making a field of grass. We have the grass, we just need to make it like a enclosed field of grass. So yeah, shouldn't be that bad. We do have the island right here. The fact this is an island means we don't need a wall on all the sides. Our cows and horses can take a swim if they'd like, but I would recommend against that. And I gotta say, after doing all those complicated block palettes and designing with our builds so far, doing these pastures is very relaxing. I'm just making a safe space for our cows and horses. But of course, can I call myself a builder if I'm not overcomplicating this just a little bit? Maybe we can just add a couple patches of dirt showing where our horses have been, eating the grass. There is one pasture looking fantastic. We can make another pasture real quick for our cows this time. And there we go. We also added a nice little tree in our area. Just add a little bit of detail. But with our animal enclosures done, we can finally add them in. We're just gonna have a bunch of animals spread out. Oh no! Our animals can get out. I understand why. I kind of forgot that gates are only helpful if you don't have any, solid blocks next to them. And I had solid blocks next to them, so they were not very helpful. Ignore me while we do some cleaning up. Okay, let's try this again, shall we? Okay, I don't see any other mobs trying to escape. I think we're good. We can call this area done. So we just have a couple more features to add. We need to do our silos real quick, which are just big cylinders, so they shouldn't be that hard. It turns out they were very easy to make. We have our two silos right here. We just have a little bit of a gradient going on with some extra details, but they look very nice, and when we zoom out, they fit right in with that farm aesthetic. Perfect. Okay, last cool detail. We have to do this dock. Docks are pretty easy to make. You can never go wrong with using the classic campfire design, just placing a bunch of campfires and then smothering them with a shovel. Surprising no one, we can also add some texture with some trapdoors and slabs. Of course, a dock needs a ship or a boat, so we can add that in real quick. Just like that, super cute. We might as well add a little fishing boat to the side. I think that would fit in very well too. And with that, our dock is done. And that means all of the structures are done for our farm, but the environment is nowhere close. We still need to add all of our paths. Once we have our paths in, we can create our fields, and then from there, we should be done. It still looks like we have a lot to do, but really, it's not that much. It's just going to be a lot of landscaping. Okay, but for our paths, we're just going to take a book out of, everything we've done here and use a lot of the same blocks. And then I'd like to just have some walls along the side. These will help separate our path from the eventual fields. And when creating my paths, one of the most important things I think about is how it's going to show where. So I'll pick a, palette of blocks, a nice gradient, going from something that's the most worn, in this case the path block, because it's kind of sunk into the ground, and then we go into lighter stuff, some packed mud maybe, showing where some dust spots are, and then rooted dirt, coarse dirt, and eventually some soul sand. As with many things, it's often more of an art than a science, but just messing around a bit can get us the effect we want. The good thing is nobody's going to be critiquing the way your paths look, so getting the general vibe of it is more than enough. I went ahead and outlined the entire fence, just get an idea of what is going to be, the farm stuff and then the fields. I want to make the farm area as small as possible and the fields as big as possible, just so this really feels like a big farm. I think we have that going on, so we can continue with our paths. Lots and lots of paths, it turns out. And as I'm working on this, I did remember I want to add some little paths going down to the water. They're meant to be little dividers between fields, so it's not just like a monotone look around the island. There we go, we have a nice little divider between our two fields. Here's another dividing path, and this one is very long. Yay, that's the rough draft done, and we have a ton of paths, but they really help connect this space and make it feel like it actually inhabits the island. We have some green areas right here, along the fence over here, and I just want to take some plant blocks and add a little bit of life to this. Trying to show that there's a battle between nature and the farmers here. Both of them trying to take over the land of this island. Perfect. And can you see what it does to just make this feel a bit more alive and, you know, in nature? And while I love these paths, there is an issue with them. I thought the path block was good. It's good in theory. It's worked before, but it does not work here. It looks like the ground is like super muddy and it just draws a lot of attention away from, you know, the main features that we want to focus on. So let's replace them. I think I want to use some brown mushroom and some mud bricks. Wow, that looks a lot better. Honestly, I think I'm gonna like it more without the mud bricks. Yeah, that definitely looks best. We have these bright paths going through our farm, but we can actually focus on the cool stuff going on and not like, you know, just the walkways. We have one final thing to do with this farm, and that is to plant all the crops. It's the moment I've been waiting for, the moment you've probably been waiting for. So you know what? Let's get this done. Here's one field planted. There's our second field of wheat all planted. Here's our third field, and that is our fourth section. I did do some work on the back end of the island. There was a forest right here, and I just cleared half of it, added our road all the way to the back, and added some more farmland. But otherwise, our wheat fields are done. We do need to grow these up, so we can just do a little bit of magic. And there we go. There is a full island of wheat. You know, it feels kind of bad having spent 2 hours of my life literally just planting wheat in Minecraft, but there's something to be said about big open fields of wheat. They're just very tranquil and relaxing. I don't know, do you guys feel this way too? But seriously, adding all that transforms this build. It makes it feel like a farm, and I love how we built this on an island. Compared to the surrounding terrain, this feels like its own environment, which is something that's really special. But otherwise, that wraps up this build. I can't believe we finished it, and it looks this good. We have our farmhouse, we have our barn, our silos, our stables, all of our animals, and of course, our big fields. It's definitely the biggest biome build I've ever made. It feels like everything a plains biome is and more. I just love every feature. It all blends so well together. I am so happy. If you enjoyed this video too, make sure to like and subscribe. I can't wait to see what other biome builds we do. It was so much fun putting this together. But anyways, as always, thank you all so much for watching and have a great day.